Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Jack and Joe show. Jack, how are you doing on this fine, sunny evening?
Yes, very well actually. Sun is shining. Actually, it looks fairly overcast now, but yeah, it's good stuff. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. And we had another positive result of the weekend. It feels really weird to me that there's only 2 games left of this Premier League season, and we're feeling very happy, Jack, because that is not what I expected. I expected that game against Southampton to be a crunch match. In the end, it wasn't really for either side because Southampton were, we said last week, all but gone, even if they did win that game. Obviously, anything but a win would seal their fate, and that is exactly what happened. Um, but it did feel a little bit, Jack, like there was nothing in it for either team. It felt like Southampton were resigned before the game started, partly due to their performance, but I think it's also partly due to how we played. And once again, I think it was an accomplished performance where we had complete control of the game. Maybe didn't create as many chances as we do sometimes, but still created far more than Southampton. And I think 2-0 was a pretty apt scoreline for the game. I think more than that would have been great. But I think 2-0 summed it up pretty well, and wonderful to have both strikers score.
Yeah, no, it actually sort of summed up our striker situation at the moment in a striker in Mitrovic who's come back to score, but actually it was Vinicius who got the first one, and actually sums up his performances of recent games where he's actually come good and scored goals and actually contributed very, very well. And I think that the fans have now started to sort of respect Carlos Vinicius a lot more than he was respected maybe 2 or 3 months ago, um, when he was failing to make an impact even off the bench when Mitrovic was playing. So it was a nice moment. I think Vinicius knows in his heart that he's playing second fiddle to Mitrovic, but it was still a nice gesture. Gesture sounds so patronising of Marco Silva to continue starting him ahead of Mitrovic. We all sort of expected Mitrovic just to take his place, but I thought the overall performance in Fulham was just. It's sad that we weren't even challenged by a team who had to
Yeah,
win. It's actually quite sad, and I'm looking back on this season now and thinking of games against these teams at the bottom and thinking yes, were much more superior than them. But apart from Leicester getting a couple of consolations, they've hardly given us a game. They've hardly given us some sort of battle. Leeds maybe towards the end, but maybe that just writes home how good we've been this season and how much we've improved as a side coming up from the Championship. And Joe, we're now staring at a situation where Leicester City, a club that has been very much established Premier League for a while, are going to maybe go down. And we're playing a team at the weekend in Crystal Palace who are very established and got in someone who we know very, very well in Roy Hodgson, and they're staying up. But the last word on Southampton I'll say is that they're going down with no sort of optimism about bouncing back. I mean, they'll want to bounce back, of course, but there's no. There's a lot of players who will want to leave. Their squad basically is going to look very, very different next season in August. But ours will look maybe different in a more positive light, Joe. 15 wins in the season, just amazing stuff, and another clean sheet. Leonard didn't have anything to do, though, on Saturday.
no, I think he had one very simple save to make early on when the Southampton striker shot from just a ridiculous place on the pitch. He just snatched it after he won the ball off Diop, and it was almost like, why are you shooting from there? And that was as good as it got for them. I agree with what you say that it is a bit sad. I don't like relegating a team, so we've been on the other end of it as fans. I don't have any particular feelings either way for Southampton as a club, but I respect football fans that go to games, and no one wants to see their team go down. And I think it just sums up the point that don't take these games for granted as a Fulham fan right now, that we've had a pretty boring, let's face it, 2-0 win, nothing super exciting other than Mitrovic coming back and scoring. Pretty routine, but don't take that for granted. The fact that we're getting routine wins in the Premier League is just fantastic, and we would have bitten your hand off for it a couple of years ago. Not that anyone's complaining about this, everyone's buzzing about the win. I just mean wins like this, even though they're a bit routine, they're still special because the place that we've got to is far more than we anticipated.
I agree.
What you said about Southampton, their squad for next year, I know a lot of people are here. Just Fulham, we like to talk about the rest of the league as well. For those of you that are interested in Southampton, I'd recommend Jacob Tanswell's piece that he put on The Athletic after the relegation was confirmed on Saturday evening. Basically just talking about what's happened this season. And there's just a few really big similarities to, I think, Fulham. Maybe not the last relegation, but the two before that, when it's a big bloated squad, so many new faces, divides between the old heads and the younger faces that have come in. There's several managerial changes that have happened throughout the season and the decision making that went on behind that. It's super interesting. And it's also just a wake-up call that the Premier League is ruthless. Southampton were comfortable for years. We're playing another team now in Crystal Palace on the weekend, who we'll go on to talk about now, that they've been comfortable for years. But when Vieira left, there was a real air of uncertainty about whether they would be in the Premier League next season. Roy Hodgson's come in and steadied the ship. And I think that's what we should talk about now, Jack. And it's our last home game of the season. I'm really looking forward to the lap of appreciation, lap of honour, whatever you want to call it at the end. I think it's appreciation rather than honour, because we haven't technically won something, but they've won something to us, because let's face it, we wanted to stay up. That was the trophy for the season. And they've more than beaten that. I think first off, what we should say is team news. We haven't heard anything different after the Southampton game in terms of there's no new concerns or anyone that was previously out coming back. You know, the injuries that we know about there for the season in terms of Pereira and in terms of Ream. What are you expecting from this game, Jack? I mean, I'm expecting a bit of a two teams on the beach, but I'm hoping that it's two teams that really want to get a win for the end of the season. No, we're still going for our record points tally, and I don't think we've played like a team on the beach recently, which I think is important to note. I don't think we've played like that at all. One thing from Palace team news, and I know you see Palace very regularly, Jack, so I know you'll have a lot more insight than I do, is that we think Zaha is going to be out for this one. We think Zaha might have actually played his last game for Crystal Palace, which is obviously a huge blow to them, but he's not their only danger man.
Yeah, no, when he was substituted against Bournemouth, there was a whole big thing made of it as well, because he sort of went down under no sort of pressure. It was a touch of the ball, a pass he made that sort of made him go down and feel his hamstring or calf or groin. I'm not too sure of that. But yeah, he was substituted in the 51st minute. So that could be very sad. I mean, obviously Zaha is a player that is the danger man for Palace, and when he wasn't playing, Palace looked a shell of themselves at times, even though they went to Leeds and won 5-1 without him. That they were struggling. But the players I'm really excited to see, and every time I go and see Palace, I'm very excited to go and see Ebere Eze and Michael Elise. Two players who are just so silky, so great to watch. And, well, I mean, they're going to be linked with other clubs this summer for sure. Palace will see them as their most key assets alongside Wilf Zaha. They actually played Will Hughes in the last game. They started him alongside Doucouré and Eze in midfield with Ayew up front. So I'm expecting maybe a similar side. Maybe Ayew might go wider without Zaha, and they'll play the likes of Edouard down the middle, or Jean-Philippe Mateta, perhaps. And in terms of they've been starting Sam Johnstone in goal ahead of Gaeta. I think I was actually at the last game Gaeta played, which is when he made the mistake against Southampton in the FA Cup. I don't know. He must have played since then. But anyway, he's come back. He's come into the fold now, Johnston. And then, well, the back four really picks itself with Joel Ward. Of course, we know Yalki Manderson very, very well. Mark Gahey and Mitchell. So, yeah, there's a little wiggle room in that midfield. And obviously, Ayew can play out wide, like I said. So I'm expecting a solid performance from Palace. I think Palace have sort of been let off the shackles a little bit from Roy Hodgson. It's not been a Roy Hodgson team where it's like we score and we defend. It's actually quite free-flowing, and they're trying to score more and more goals, as we've seen this season in the last few weeks. I do feel sorry for Vieira, the fact that he lost his job off the back of really difficult fixtures, and Roy Hodgson's come in with more favourable fixtures and thus got more points and on paper made it look very much more impressive, which it still has been because he was under immense pressure and Palace were free falling basically. I'm expecting a good game. Palace have got ourselves and Forest left this season. In terms of Fulham and team news, I would make one change and just start Mitrovic, just so we get him. We all want him to start at Old Trafford. We just want him firing. So get him starting and maybe play him 70, 80 minutes against Palace and getting ready for the last game of the season. That's the only change I'd make. I just listened to the Willian podcast and it was good to hear from him. And oh gosh, I thought, and yeah, what about you? Would that be the only change you'd make as well?
I think so. I know that we both disagreed last week in terms of should Mitrovic. So we disagreed with Marco Silva's eventual decision. In terms of we both thought that he was going to start against Southampton. Completely understand why he didn't. And Marco Silva's always been the sort of way that you have to earn your place back in the team. So it does make sense. And Vinicius did well again. But I thought when Mitrovic came on, his hold-up play was sublime. I thought he was just looked like he was absolutely gagging for more goals, like in a good way. It was great. And it was just one of these things where he looks hungry. We want to see him start. We want to see him get more goals before the end of the season. And I think this is the opportunity to put him back in now where it's slightly more fair on Vinicius than it would have been last week, I think it's fair to say, because he has got his goal. He's come on. Vinicius, still had this chance to show what he's got, and what he's got is great. What he's got is not as good as Mitrovic, and that is just due to the quality of the player at this moment in time. Gary Neville voice there for a second. And I agree with the rest of the team. I'd go unchanged. I think it worked really well against Southampton and against Leicester. Harry Wilson's been electric. Willian's always sharp. And yeah, that Fulham Fix episode with him was interesting to hear from him. And hopefully we can get his contract sorted soon for next season. We'll talk more next week maybe about that and the Marco Silva situation. There hasn't really been much movement there. In terms of score prediction, Jack, I mean, without Pereira, we're less dangerous on set pieces. They've been very poor in some games recently. That West Ham one sticks out when I think West Ham scored 3 from corners in that game. In that 4-3 win.
3 of their goals came from corners.
Just bizarre.
Yeah.
Hopefully that's something that we can use to our advantage, although we've not been as prolific from set pieces in recent weeks and months than we were at the start of the season, I think. I think that we're going to go out at home this season with a bang. I think that we're going to beat Palace 3-1.
Oh, I'd love to end it with a win because I think it would just sort of sum up the season and all the fans would love it. I think it might be a bit of a ding dong back and forth. 2-2, I see it being.
Okay.
And I think we may have to come from behind twice.
Interesting.
Which would be a good point, but I'd love to win the game. I think whatever happens on Saturday, stay behind if you can, clap the players, really show your appreciation because this is quite rare. We didn't have it in 13-14, we didn't have it in 18-19 and 2021. Like, do you know what I mean? It's and obviously, that last game against Newcastle was so sad. Like they did the lap of honor, and there was 2,000 fans there, and we were down. It was Parker was, his head was already at the vitality. So this is going to be a really nice occasion. Hopefully, the sun's out. The atmosphere will be good. Palace will make noise. We'll make noise. It's just a nice occasion, and obviously, Roy Hodgson returns to Craven Cottage. I can't remember the last time he managed at Craven Cottage. It might have been with Palace in lockdown.
It must have been. Yeah, when they came, they won 2-1, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. That was a bad day at the office. TC. Actually, that was the last Premier League goal TC scored before his goals against Leicester.
Wow.
Not
the ones against Everton. A long time ago. I mean, I know he was injured for a long time, but that is a long time ago. And that was just typical Hodgson, which I don't think is how they've been playing under him recently, in terms of it was very much defence first. Yeah. And we actually battered them in terms of possession, but we just did nothing with it, which obviously is a mark of that season overall. And they were very good on the break with Zaha in particular. I think Zaha set up the first goal and scored the second. Yeah. Really frustrating game. Great goal by Kearney, but hopefully we're on the other end of the scoreline this time.
Slightly shorter episode today, as there's not much to talk about. I will ask you a couple more questions. So Southampton are down. That's confirmed by us. Who's joining them? I mean, now 2 games left for most teams. It's Leeds, it's Leicester, Everton, and Forest. I think West Ham will just about be okay. What are you thinking?
Right now, I'm thinking that it's Leeds. Who they got? They've got West Ham away and Spurs at home. I think for me, there isn't one here where I'm seeing the obvious. That's the one where you get 3 points. Whereas for Leicester, who I also now think will go down, so that's my 2. They've got West Ham at home as their last game of the season. The problem with that is it could be too late by that point.
Yeah,
if teams above them get results.
Because they play the Monday. They play on Monday.
Exactly. Yeah. And, do I see them going to Newcastle and get anything? I don't. Weird things can happen, but I don't see it. I see a team that crumbles under any sort of pressure at the moment. They started the first 10 minutes yesterday quite bright against Liverpool, and they absolutely crumbled. They could have gone 3-0 down with a hat-trick from Jones in about 3 minutes. It was crazy. I think that Everton will stay up. I think that their fixtures are the best out of the 3. And I think that Forest at the moment they've got enough points to scrape results and get over the line.
Yeah.
Who have they got last day of the season? I know they've got Arsenal at
Palace
home.
away.
Palace away. I can see them going there and
getting
a point, for example. And then there's a 4-point gap to make up, or a 5-point gap if you're slightly below. I see it being Leicester and Leeds now, which has completely changed from what I thought a few weeks ago when I really thought that Forest were going to go. I still did think that Leeds were going to be down there, but I thought that Leeds would have a chance. I don't know if they do. I think they had to beat Newcastle, Jack.
And they didn't. They only managed to get a draw. We watched that in the pub beforehand. That was a nice pre-drink. I'm going to be at West Ham Leeds on Sunday, and I just feel like because West Ham still have something to play for in the Premier League, they're not quite safe yet. But then again, they do have the Thursday night second leg, which will take a lot out of them. So maybe there is an opportunity for Leeds. I think that game will probably end in a draw.
I think that's the problem, isn't it? Is a draw there enough for Leeds?
No, it's not.
They really have to go there and win.
Then they'd have to beat Spurs. I mean, you could beat Spurs. Anyone could beat Spurs on their day, and I could see that happening for sure. But if Everton get something out of Bournemouth on the last day, and Forest get something out of Palace, a win against Spurs for Leeds might not be enough. I think Saints are gone. I think Leicester are gone, unless they pull out a remarkable result. They are good night, God bless, honestly, and it's extraordinary, and it's such a poor season for them. And we beat them twice, and they looked so rubbish at our place. And last night, I caught a tiny bit of the game, and from what I saw, they were just on their last legs. And we are halfway through the playoffs. Sunderland take a lead into Kenilworth Road tonight. There's a 0-0 draw between Coventry and Borough. Have you watched those games, and are you swayed by what you've seen and thinking who's the strongest out of those 4?
I've watched them, and I was surprised by Sunderland. Sunderland winning that home game was actually not what I expected. I sort of thought Luton would go there and get something and bring it back to Kenilworth Road. And I was quite confident that Luton would get through. That's, I think, for me, the more interesting game, because I would now expect Borough to beat Coventry in that second leg. You've always said, and I agree, that they're probably the strongest team in the playoffs on paper as a squad. And in a one-off home game, I back them to get the job done. This other one's tricky. Wouldn't be surprised if this one went to extra time and was a bit of a thriller, but I really couldn't call it now.
I've got a sneaky suspicion that both ties are going to end in penalty shootouts. I think Luton win tonight 1-0, and it will go to pens, or it will end at extra time or penalties, but both games will go to extra time. I can actually see the Coventry Middlesbrough game being so similar to the first leg. Middlesbrough, though, will put it right on them. But I think it will end 0-0 over 2 legs, and it might have to be decided by pens or extra time. And I can't call it. I think I can't call who will be in the final cup beyond the 90 minutes. It's so tight. And obviously, Sunderland have that slender advantage that puts them in a better position. But Luton at home are very, very strong. And I'm expecting a fast start from them tonight. Of course, it's the Champions League semi-finals tonight. We're recording on Tuesday and Champions League semi-finals. So it's going to have to be a double screen sort of night or 2 nights. Last thing, I think we're about 1 point away, I think, from guaranteed to be finishing above Chelsea. Is that correct? Because they've got another game in hand, don't they?
I think technically it would be 2 points because we're eight ahead of them. So we'd be 9 ahead. And don't get me wrong, that they wouldn't catch us with 9 because of the goal difference. Yeah. And I don't think they're going to win. I mean, potentially not even any of their games, but definitely not all 3. One of them is literally at the Etihad when City can secure the title. It's a wonderful, wonderful achievement. And I'd love to top it off by finishing above Brentford as well. To do that, I think we 100% need to beat Palace. And we probably need to get something at United to guarantee it. But if we can beat Palace, I reckon we should hopefully finish above Brentford, which would just be wonderful to be the top club in West London. It would be a brilliant, brilliant achievement. Brentford's last 2 games are very tough. They've got Spurs away and they've got City at home. I could easily see them getting something in both of those games. They got something in both of the return fixtures, draw at home to Spurs, win away at City. But if Tony's still out injured, or I don't know if I'm injured, then, hopefully we'll see something special in terms of the final league standings that isn't Europe, but is the next best thing.
And there we have it. The penultimate pre-match Jack and Joe show of the season. How time flies when you're having fun. And we've certainly had a lot of fun this season. Joe, thank you so much for being here.
Certainly have. Thanks, Jack. Thanks, everyone, for watching, and enjoy the last home game.
The support on the channel has been great. We've hit some good numbers this season in terms of subscribers and views. And we want to keep going and pushing that on to next season because it's going to be a big summer ahead, a big Premier League season, and Fulham will be there. Thank you so much for watching. Come on, Fulham.